This is a video about how to get to mastery level in what we do. Now, don't let that put you off. Some people will go, great, I love that. And other people will be like, oh, that sounds difficult and that sounds like a bit of a challenge. No, because all I'm going to ask you to do is to do the same as what you're doing with a very slight shift of emphasis. Because what has happened in our profession, and in fact all of the professions where we put hands on our patients and we try to help them in terms of get better and get rid of their pain and improve their health, is that we've been taught technical skills. Now we need those technical skills, it's obvious, it's one thing that we need to do, we need strong technical skills. But we aren't taught how to learn from our patients, because no matter how many courses you go on, you're going to clock far more hours with your patients than you do doing courses. And so if we learn and learn as well as we can from our patients, then we will upskill faster, we'll improve better, and we'll be of more use to our patients, and we can do more service in the world. Now, what I mean by this is that if we aren't paying attention to what works with patients and what doesn't work with patients, then we aren't practicing in the best manner that we can. And I want to lean here on Anders Ericsson's work. Now, Anders Ericsson is a researcher into high performance, not in osteopathy or in the health field, just across the board. So he studied chess grandmasters, he studied top violinists and other musicians, top musicians in the world. And across all of these different high performance fields he's seen, and he's worked for many years in his research, he's found particular things to be true. And it's really interesting because it levels out the playing field in terms of talent. Because I think we all believe, that person is great because they're a tennis player and they've just got natural talent. Look at Agassi, look at Nadal, etc. Or that person's great in their field, they're just a natural. Now, I really strongly believe this, and even after reading Anders Ericsson's work, I was like, nah, that's rubbish. But I've got to change my mindset about this because the studies he's done is really concrete. And he's even gone back and looked at Mozart, the classic child genius, Mozart. And I won't go through all of that stuff, but basically what he looks at is he looks historically at what happened and how Mozart's father was a composer and he hothoused Mozart and all these things. So there's this idea of having a perfect pitch. Mozart had perfect pitch, and if you're a musician, you'll know what this means. It means you can hear anything, a click or a whack or a car engine going, and you can bang, that pitch. And it always thought that was just, everybody in music thought that was just natural, but it's not. It can be learned, and Anders Ericsson's work shows that. So even with someone with Mozart, it's not natural talent, it's practice, and it's practice in a particular deliberate way that makes it work. You've also got to put a number of hours in as well. It's not like Mozart just suddenly became Mozart. It was the amount of hours he put in, but it was the way he practiced on those hours. And that's the thing I want to really stress in this video, because the amount of hours we clock with patients, we should all be experts. We should all be brilliant. But if we look around our field and we look around other disciplines within the health field, we know that's not true. Because patients tell us, it's like, I didn't like that. It's not just I didn't like that person, but that person was no good. And you hear that thing over and over again. So there are differences. And it's because we're not doing the same thing with patients. We're not learning from patients in the same way. And what Anders Ericsson talked about is something that you may have heard of. It's this 10,000 hours rule. Now it's been popularized into you just clock 10,000 hours and then you'll become an expert. And that is not what he was talking about. Completely not the case. And an example of that, and it's one that's dear to my heart, is tennis, because I am a pretty average tennis player. And no matter how many hours I practice, I really kind of hit a ceiling and I don't get any better. And it's because I'm just kind of knocking the ball back and forth, having fun and trying to win the game. I'm competitive, I want to win, but I'm not paying attention to my mistakes, and I'm not paying attention, I'm not doing deliberate practice. That's what Anders Ericsson talked about, deliberate practice. And so this is why you have so many club players. And when you get a player like Agassi or Nadal, they put hours and hours of practice in and they work in a particular way. And you can go back and look at different cases. You can look at Andy Murray, whose coach was Ivan Lendl. And then you can go back and look at Ivan Lendl when he played McEnroe, and he couldn't beat McEnroe. And he changed what he did, and he beat McEnroe, and McEnroe never beat him ever again in his career. That was it, boom. Because he changed what he did, and he changed his practice, and he really was disciplined about what he did. Now, don't let me put you off with that word discipline. I'm not going to hem you in, but I'm going to give you a little bit of framework here so that you can reach into this and get a bit of freedom and benefit from this. So let's come back to this deliberate practice. Now, the take-home message here is when you're with patients, you have to pay absolute attention to what works and doesn't work. Now, the second stage of that is when you've got your hands on and you can feel the feedback from the tissue. But that's a little bit more of an advanced stage. The first stage I want you to go with is simply listening to your patients, because we don't listen to them. We think we do, but we don't. Our filter comes in. So a patient comes back, how are you? Oh yeah, not so good. Boom, shutters come down. We feel, feel challenged by that emotionally. And we usually go to our defense mechanisms, our happy places. And that can be, have you done your exercises? What were you doing in the week? You've flared it up. Or in your own mind, if you don't say this, oh, well, they are getting on a bit. They're a little bit old, Or, I wonder if it's emotional. That's my go-to. Oh, it's probably emotional, Patient doesn't really want to get better. All of these different things. And we'll go there without even realizing, even when you don't say these things to the patient, just like, okay, but inside you're kind of, And so what happens then is that after that patient session, you don't want to look at it and examine it much. Yeah, so you won't dig into that. And what happens, particularly with patients that aren't getting better, you end up doing the same old, same old. You don't explore different avenues. You might refer them off, but in terms of treatment, you get caught more and more than the deer in the headlights. I mean, this. It's like that patient that's aggressive, they're not getting better, they're really in your face. You're not in a state where you can explore and really feel what's going on with their tissues and get a good change. You're like deer in the headlights, okay, and you end up doing the same old, same old. And so that's what happens. Our horizons narrow. And in terms of what Anders Ericsson is talking about, that is not deliberate practice. Because what he saw in chess players, in violinists, in musicians, lots of different people, the difference between a concert violinist, someone that is at the top in the world, I mean absolute top of the world, and someone that's just a good violinist, is that the good violinist won't pay attention to their mistakes. They might know, oh, that's a really bad note, but they won't know all the different mistakes, and they won't actually visualize into what's happening. So what is the feel and the shape of my hand and my body in space and the feel on the violin? You can tell I don't play violin, I don't even know where it is. What does that feel like? And you visualize what that feels like. And so there are two take-homes from this video. The first one is I say got to, and that's really just like, don't tell me what I've got to do. It would be really nice if you started to be a little bit more abrasive with yourself, and with those patients that don't get better and aren't so good, just list them down. So you're going to list down at the end of the day, Mrs. Miggins and Fred. Yeah, and then at the end of the week, you're going to take a time when you're feeling really good about yourself. You're not feeling like, oh, I'm useless. You spent time with family, time with friends. Your energy is good. Maybe on the weekend, let's say it's Sunday, and you're going to look at that list and you go back at your notes and you're going to choose one of those patients, just one of those patients, and then you're going to go through and you're going to try and work out why they're not getting better. Was it something to do with your diagnostic skills? Was it something to do with the way you apply the treatment? Were you not effective in your treatment? Was it the way they came across? Did they manage to kind of puncture you and find certain weaknesses in you? So the things that they said, it deflated your energetic state and your emotional state, and so you weren't able to be, full and there for them, because that's a big part of change. It's about your mental state and your emotional state, so you can bring the energy to make the technique effective. So that's what I want to do. That one thing is to look at the patients, and we can explore this and go a little bit further, but start to do that. And when you start to do that, you're going to start to be more critical of yourself. Now, I mean that in a good way. So I dropped high velocity thrust reasonably soon in my osteopathic career, probably 5 or 6 months in. I kept them in some ways, but generally I dropped most of them. And that was because the patients weren't getting better. Now, initially I wasn't very good at them, but I then got better at them. But what I found was, regardless of whether I got a good manipulation, it's like, yeah, that's a good manipulation, or whether I failed to manipulate, as in, it didn't cavitate, it wasn't a good manipulation, or in fact, I didn't manipulate them at all, I tried something else, it wasn't effective in what was happening. And so I needed to be honest with myself. Now, it was an easy win for me, because I don't like high velocity thrust, and so I had to be careful that I wasn't fooling myself. But it was true, it didn't work for me. I'm not saying for other people, it didn't work for me, and so I needed to move on to do other things. And so I want you to start digging into these things and finding out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And the easiest way is to look at those patients where you aren't that successful and then dig into that and see what's going on. Now the second part of that, and I'm going to come on to that in the second video, but I'm going to give you a little, in the next video of the series, but I'm going to give you a little taste of that, is that our visualization and what we do with patients so that we can start to feel, and feedback is something I referred to earlier, what is the actual feedback from that patient when we have our hands on. So we get an understanding of what it feels like when it works for the patient and when it doesn't work, rather than having to wait to the end of the treatment or even wait for them to come back a week later. And it really is gold dust. So we'll explore that a little bit more in the next video.